All right, Assalamu alaikum YouTube, how y'all doing? Today I am here with the amazing Miss Jory Micah. You can follow her. Follow her at Jory Micah, JORYMICAH as in hotel at x.com. She is, according to her own bio, a truth seeker, a freedom lover, friend to all who are friendly, an MA in New Testament theology and church history. That's pretty cool. Free thinker, anti-war, and most importantly, as it regards to this show, anti-Zionist and anti-Israel, and waking up. And boy, has there been a whole lot of waking up. She's got a great page. I suggest you all follow it. Miss Jory, how are you doing?
There. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
And where are you calling us from?
So I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area.
Penguins all the
Born
way.
and raised here, but I've done a lot of traveling in my life, and I went to college in Texas, and then I got my master's in Virginia Beach, and then moved back to Pennsylvania because this is where my family's at.
Okay, awesome. Pennsylvania's a great state. I used to live in Buffalo, New York for a while, and I go through there all the time.
Thank
Great
you.
state.
It's beautiful.
Wonderful. So, Jory, please tell us about your journey to get to this point where you're an activist fighting for Palestine and protesting all things Zionist in Israel.
Sure. I think what led me to becoming anti-Zionist and anti-Israel was the fact that I kind of determined that I was going to find out what the heck's going on with all these wars and why is America always in wars? And I didn't understand it, and I wanted to understand it because I'm very anti-war. And so when I went on this journey and this search, that's when I started realizing that pretty much behind all these wars are Zionists and Israel. And that kind of led me to a lot of Muslims. And then Muslims started kind of filling in the blanks for me of what's going on with the fact that these Zionists are not only occupying Palestine, but they're occupying America. And I started realizing, oh man, I've been hating on America because I was angry because I loved America. I was born and raised here. And I was hating on it for a while there because it was so disgusting, all the wars and everything. So I started realizing by talking to people over in the Middle East is that basically Israelis have taken over our government and Zionist Jews have taken over everything pretty much, or they already created it, whether it be Hollywood or mainstream media or the central banks, which is probably the biggest problem. And I started realizing that this is not just a Palestinian problem. It's not just an American problem, but it's a problem for humanity, all of humanity. And that's when I started realizing, like, I need to be a person that unites humanity, whether people are Muslim or Christian or left or right, no matter what they claim. And also, a lot of people they take on labels that they don't understand or that have been really, changed over the years. And I started realizing, like, I'm not going to judge people by the labels they take on because everyone is so confused in our society because we have been confused and demoralized on purpose by the Zionists, through Hollywood and through our music and through all kinds of things. So, that's kind of where it all led me. It all kind of led me to, like, I'm so grateful that I ran into so many Muslims because I would not have understood what was going on if I had not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah for all things. That's pretty awesome. So I'm really curious. Did you go down to Texas to study New Testament specifically. What led you on that journey, and
Mhm.
what is your religious background? Does that
Sure.
play into this larger discussion here about Zionism in Israel and America?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So I was born and raised in the Pentecostal sect of evangelicalism, and my
Wow.
dad was yeah, my dad was a minister, and I was basically raised in to become a minister myself, and which was what I wanted. Like, I wasn't forced. It was like, since I was a kid, I felt a calling to be a minister, and so I ended up going down to Dallas, Texas first, to Christ for the Nations, which is a Pentecostal, non-accredited, small 2-year Bible college.
Hey,
And so
I've driven by that place. I
have
know what
you?
you're talking about. Yeah, it's that big gray building right by the highway, isn't it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I know
Yep.
that place.
That's so funny. I know, it's a small world. So, anyhow, I was not a great student in high school, and that's because it wasn't because I wasn't smart. It was because I just was not interested in school, in that kind of schooling at all. And so that's why I started in a non-accredited college, because I didn't even take SATs. So that was kind of where I learned to be a student and take things seriously. And
Mhm.
then I ended up transferring to Assemblies of God University, Southwestern, which is in Waxahachie, Texas. You know where that is?
I sure do.
Yeah. So they were willing to take my non credits and take them and make them credits, real credits. So because CF and I had a relationship with them, so they took all my credits, and I ended up studying church ministries, and I got a bachelor's degree in church ministries. And my senior year, I ended up taking a church history class, and I
Mhm.
absolutely loved it. And I ended up going to Rome and following the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. And I just fell in love with ancient history, especially ancient Christian history. And so I applied at Regent University, which is in Virginia Beach, and that is the school of Pat Robertson, who
Oh,
founded it. Who was I don't, I'm sure you know this, but he's one of the most hardcore Christian Zionists there was.
I sure did. How could I forget?
Right. So I was raised very much like you, like, honestly, like a Jewish supremacy in a way. Like, they're better than us, they're smarter than us, we are to honor them, we are to basically unconditionally give them anything they want. And I was taught that from a very young age. And so
Mm.
was my mom. So this was coming from my grandfather. So this was very ingrained into my family, which many Americans have the same experience, especially evangelicals, and especially if you were raised in either the charismatic slash Pentecostal side of evangelicalism,
Mhm.
or the other side of evangelicalism is like your Baptists, which is funny that the Baptists support Zionism, and so does the charismatic slash Pentecostals, because those two sects are often
They don't
um
agree on anything.
don't agree on anything. Exactly, you get it.
I do. I'm not from a Protestant background, but I do understand the Protestant realm.
Right.
So, growing up in Texas, I do understand the
Oh
Protestant realm
yeah,
very
Texas is the
well.
Bible Belt
It
for
is.
sure.
I understand that 110%. Yeah, no, I wanted to bring you on because a lot of people in the Muslim world, they always ask me, Harry, why do Protestant in America, why Christian in America always support Israel? Why do they do this? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, you don't understand the level of brainwashing. And I
Exactly.
one of the reasons I brought you on the show is to give like a human face and a human voice to show what it's like, like growing up with this environment, because you just are from day one. It is like, it's almost like Jonestown. It's
Yeah.
like Jonestown, borderline Jonestown. And it is going up in the 80s and 90s. I was never into Christian Zionism, but I remember it being everywhere in Texas when I was a kid.
Right.
You know, the billboards, the TV, the church communities, the school prayer groups at football games, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
It is just so deeply ingrained in the fabric of Southern and Midwestern Protestant culture.
True.
110%.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
What was the when you were at these Bible colleges, did you ever, and you were studying ancient church history, because you were talking about this, just for clarification, I actually come from a convert to Eastern Orthodoxy background before I became a convert to Islam. So I'm wondering, yes, there's a connection. We'll get into that at some point too.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you ever encountered Eastern Orthodox Christians, especially people from Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Palestine itself.
Only online is where I kind of developed that relationship. To be honest, where I live, I think I've seen a Muslim one time where I live. So there are just not many Muslims, and where there is, like, it's very segregated. I feel like, it's like we don't hang out as much, especially in Pennsylvania. There just aren't a lot of Muslims. So no, I never, only through the scriptures have I read it, and through church history have I understood this a little bit. And then developing a relationship with Muslims online has really helped me to understand those types of Christians. And honestly, I didn't even know. I never even thought about the fact that, of course, there's Palestinian Christians. This is where Christianity was freaking birthed. Like. But we weren't taught that. We weren't taught that at all. Like we weren't even taught that much about Jews, to be honest. It was just Jews are to be honored and respected and treated like they're special, but it wasn't like they got deep into that. So yeah, that's about it.
No, I'm glad you're saying this, because a lot of times what I hear, and I have evangelical Protestant people in my extended family that are just wonderful, beautiful people. And sometimes they have prayer requests on Facebook, and I say, even as a Muslim, and they know I'm Muslim now, and I still say, I'm totally going to pray for that. Just, because, even we talk about this in Islam, the people that are closest to us in spirit are the Christians.
Yeah.
In many, many ways. Many, many ways. And it is, I try to explain this to Muslims. They just don't understand. People who are born into Islam, especially people who have never encountered evangelical Christians, they just think that evangelical Christians are these mean-spirited, nasty, hateful, fanatical people. I mean, some of them certainly are, but a lot of them, they just don't have good information.
100%. That's why I try to come. I used to be really angry with evangelicals, and it was, I had to go through that in order to depart from that. But now that I've healed from that atmosphere, I've developed a love for them, and I want the world to know that these people are not bad people. Now, some of our leaders, like Pat Robertson's a bad person because he manipulated millions of people, or Joel Osteen, or John Hagee. These are our leaders, and they are on TV, and it's global. So they're reaching millions of evangelicals. So we're just being, not almost no regular evangelicals that are just lay people. Almost none of them are evil people. They're just completely ignorant of reality. And so I mean, you really have to think of it as a cult almost, because I mean, I wouldn't say it's as bad as like Jonestown, but it could be. It could lead to that. That's how brainwashed people are. If a leader came along that was just, you know, really asking people to do really bad things, they might do it because the level of ignorance and brainwashing. For example, I'm sure you saw this, but I just got let go from my position serving at an evangelical soup kitchen because
I
of
saw
my,
that.
yeah, because I stand up for Zionist. I mean, I stand against Zionists and I stand against Israel and I stand up for Palestinians. And they just have, to them, like, I've just crapped all over their identity, basically. You know,
Yes.
to them, like, how dare you say you hate Israel? How dare you call out the Jews? How dare you do this? How, because to them, I am committing almost blasphemy to what they've been taught.
Yes. And it is a painful process of separation. I mean, I'm assuming that you've had some very strained relationships, if not been ostracized completely by certain people in your community, especially. Yeah, how have your parents taken this? How have your friends, closest friends and allies taken this? People you grew
Sure.
up with?
Well, thankfully, my family is very supportive of me, and they know that I'm a truth seeker and that no matter what, I'm always going to seek the truth. And they know that I was born that way, you know, like my parents actually used to tell me once in a while, like, Jory, like, you're gonna have to, like, tell a little fib here, you know. And you can't
Ah,
always be so blatantly honest, basically. And so anyhow, my dad actually passed away a few years ago, and I went through the darkest time of my entire life and made a lot
justice.
of really bad mistakes. And um but I came out of it stronger in a way, because I was so sheltered.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I kind of went like crazy when my dad died. And I learned a little bit about the world in a way that I had never learned about the world before. And I realized, this is so dark. I don't want to be part of this. But I also, yeah, like, I don't have very many relationships with the evangelical church anymore because I have experienced so much rejection within the evangelical church, whether I was some, like, a children's pastor or a youth pastor, or a teacher at a Christian school, or, you know, the latest one was being let go from this soup kitchen. And the only reason I was working at this soup kitchen is because my aunt founded this soup kitchen. So I literally got let go from a soup kitchen that my aunt founded.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So I have a few girlfriends, and that, like, my whole family still goes to evangelical church, but even they, like, a lot of evangelicals are like this. They go to church on Sunday mornings for the music or for the good speaking or whatever, but they're not very connected to each other. Very, you know, it's there's people are very disconnected because we have so many mega churches and big churches
Hmm.
in the evangelical movement. So it's not like my family's like just like hardcore, like, we're defending evangelicals. They're just like, oh, we're gonna go to church on Sunday morning, you know, because that's who has the best music, or that's who has the best children's ministry, or something like that. So I just my friends are my same friends from grade school and high school. I'm extremely, like, a creature of habit, and I'm very loyal to my friends. And so they understand that I've been hurt a lot by the church, and they get it, you know. And I keep a very, very small circle of people, and I don't go to evangelical church anymore. And to be honest, I don't go to church at all anymore because
Mm.
it's been so devastating. That because I mean, you got to think, I put my whole life into this, you know. My whole life, my whole college, all of my training, everything was evangelicalism. And when I started experiencing it, especially as a woman, because they're pretty sexist against women in evangelicalism. So as a woman minister in a predominantly male field, I was often like looked over or put in a position underneath of men who had less training than me. And that kind of led me on a journey of starting a website when I was in my 20s called Breaking the Glass Steeple. And it was about empowering women who are in ministry. So that's what I did for a while there. I've kind of let that website die out, but I did it for years and wrote probably 3 volumes of books of blog posts. But I basically that's what I used my training for, is to prove that in the early church, before the Roman Catholic Church, that women served in leadership positions before the church became powerful and rich. Basically, women were very much part of the early church movement and very much to be credited for a lot of the mass movement of Christianity. So anyhow, that's kind of what I did with my degree right after, or I'd say as I was leaving the evangelical church, because I stayed for a while because I was speaking at conferences all around the country. I was speaking at conferences, and I was getting like some opportunity for a first time in a long time, because people at that time were very interested in this subject. Now that it's kind of swinging the other way, where people are like, they don't even want to talk about this anymore, which is fine. Like, I've talked about what happened.
Would you like to know? And this can be the gear that switches to our next subject.
Sure.
Because I've also been canceled.
You have?
Yeah. Let's talk about you for a second. You,
Okay.
as I'm sure many of our listeners who are regular Mad Mamalukes fans know, Lucas Gage got doxxed pretty hardcore. And he had his own little Pizzagate on his front lawn, as in people would not stop sending him pizzas that he never ordered. So would you like to tell us about your Pizzagate over there in Pittsburgh?
Sure, yeah. Right after I lost my position at the soup kitchen, within the same couple of days, Domino's came to my house, and at first I just said I didn't order this, I'm sorry. But then they came back the next day again, and I let them know. I said, hey, because I have a free Palestine sign up, and I said, hey, you see how I have this sign? Well, the Zionists who oppose the Palestinians are basically harassing me and intimidating me and using your pizza shop to do it. And I'm really sorry, but I didn't order this pizza again. And so the guy, he seemed like he was Indian or something, but he like understood, and he got it. And then also they sent Papa John's one time. So it was 3 different times that the Zionists sent pizza to my house.
Well, that's pretty that's pretty much their modus operandi. I mean, at least they're not putting cyanide in your drink yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. For the record, good luck finding me, Zionists.
Good luck finding them.
I'm on the other side of the world. You don't.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
What part of the greater Jakarta metropolitan area I am at? Good luck finding me.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. But I have to be careful here too, because as you said, these evangelical pastors are preaching globally. They preach to a global network audience, and the Protestants from Indonesia is, 90% Muslim country,
Okay.
about 8-9% Christian,
Okay.
and about half of those people are now Protestants. And
Gotcha.
they 100 years ago would not have been Zionist, but because they sit around all day, some of them, and watch, EWTN and Pat Robertson and the 700 Club and Joel Osteen, and they share it on their phones and blah 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 blah. Some of these pastors that are over here doing missions work are connected to that whole mess back in the States. Well, every now and then I encounter an Indonesian who is an evangelical, and they don't like me. Every now and then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they are very stuck in their ways. And I always say they're too ignorant to even know how ignorant they are.
Dunning-Kruger effect is 100% true.
Yeah.
And it's, there's something, Texans, are not a stupid people.
No.
Evangelicals are not stupid people.
No.
But there is this thing in evangelical American Protestantism that is sort of not anti-smart people, but it's anti-intellectualism,
right,
anti-scholarship, and there's a reason for that. There's some valid reasons to be skeptical of academia, for sure.
Right.
Like if I had an 18, 19-year-old daughter right now, I would not be sending her to any major university in the United States right now unless she's going to med school, because of how insane the woke feminazi nonsense is right now.
Right. It's pretty crazy now.
It's off the charts stupid. But they've been trained to see. It's hard to explain this to Muslims living outside the United States. They've been trained to see academia and anything outside of the Bible as somehow less than good.
Yep. And it's all about their biblical interpretation. So they have zero respect for the fact that they are only about 1/4 of the Christian church. And the reason we have so many denominations is because there are so many different ways that Christians interpret the scriptures. So I think we need to be humble about the way we interpret the scriptures, because if there's so many people disagreeing, then we can't say that one person gets it or one denomination just gets it and all the other denominations are wrong. And that's how evangelicals tend to be. They get it in their head that the scriptures are God's word, but it's their interpretation of those scriptures that is God's word to them. And then there's no compromising with that, because they believe it's God's word. And that is how this whole Zionist thing has got a stronghold on evangelicals, because they were taught a long time ago. And we can talk about the Scofield Bible, but they were taught a long time ago this certain way of looking at the scriptures, and they genuinely feel that if they don't support Israel, that they will be cursed by God, and that if they do support Israel, they will be blessed by God, because they've been told that is God's word, period.
Would you please explain to our Muslim listeners what the Scofield Bible controversy is?
Sure. Well, okay, so Scofield was he was basically a Zionist hack criminal. He was a criminal.
He's a criminal.
Yeah, a true criminal who abandoned his wife and kids, and just a terrible person all around. And somehow he got involved with the Rothschilds, who owned I can't remember which press it was, but they owned the press that ended up printing the Scofield Bibles. And what they did was they took They changed one word in the Old Testament where it said it was supposed to say that it's not Israel, it's Abraham. So it's like God will bless those who bless Abraham.
Abraham.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so not only did they edit the scriptures by changing one word, but they also added a bunch of commentary at the bottom, a bunch of footnotes. And this was like, I think, the first and maybe only Bible that had this amount of commentary. So, and then it was, because the Rothschilds have lots of money. So then this Bible was basically shipped all over the world to evangelicals, and they were taught this way of looking at the scriptures. And so this was ingrained many, many decades ago. I think maybe it even started in the late 1800s
Yeah.
when
That
Zionism
sounds
was
about
getting off
right.
the ground. Yeah, so anyhow, that is how evangelicals were basically tricked into supporting Zionism, and they're still to this day brainwashed in that way.
Now, Jory, did the evangelicals create the idea of Zionism, or did the Jews create or did Zionist Jews create
Mhm.
the idea of Zionism and then give it to the evangelicals? Who
So
created that?
from my research, this is 100% the Zionist Jews and their mission, not only to take over Palestine, but to ultimately dominate the world, because that's their religion teaches that. And that's why. I mean, these people have been kicked out of 109 countries, and every country they've ever lived in for 2,000 years, because it has to be the ideology of the religion, because I'm not a person that would say Jews are demons, or their bloodline is cursed, or anything like that, or
Mhm.
their race. If I don't even know if they are a race, but whatever. I don't say anything like that. But I do think that there must be something wrong with Judaism for the fact that they keep getting kicked out of every country they ever
Mhm.
live in. And Judaism allows for them to get into usury, which we know is the biggest problem and the biggest reason. Um, and also just this attitude of we must rule the world, and the goyim must be our slaves, and that's Talmudic Judaism,
Mhm.
so I feel that, and I actually think, based off my research, and you can tell me what you think, but I
Mhm.
do think it was the Zionist Jews all along. And one of their talking points is that there are more Christian Zionists than Jewish Zionists, which is true, but that's because there are so many more Christians
Then
than
Jews.
Jews in the world, and they fail to bring up that point. And also, I compare it to a snake, because evangelicals are basically the body of the snake, which is the bigger part of the snake. But the head of the snake are these Jewish Zionists. And that's why I say, the Christian Zionists are basically useful idiots. They are not in power. They are given lots of money through the Jewish lobbies to preach this stuff. And it all started with them giving lots of money to Scofield back long in the day. So that's the way I see it. I see it, and I'm the kind of person that if it was the Christians that were the head of the snake, I'd be all about, like, let's go after the Zionist Christians. But I mean, I feel like, you cut off the tail of the snake's still alive. But if you cut off
Mhm.
the head, you're gonna kill that snake. So I feel like,
Whoa, let's not be getting into Holocaust now here. Whoa,
oh my gosh, I'm such a bigot.
whoa. So, that is an interesting conversation that is worth getting into. I get into dialogue and discussions with this on my WhatsApp chat group all the time and on various forums. What is the real Judaism? Because in my journey to Islam, I was told Muslims are a bunch of horrible people that eat
Right.
babies. and that ISIS is actually the authentic Islam. And then I found that's actually not true.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm currently on a journey myself. Well, I have been for quite some time, always trying to figure out, well, what is the real Judaism too?
Right.
I mean, the only thing I would push back on is it's almost not, it's not really that we're having a disagreement. And I get, because you're saying things that are very similar to what many of my Muslim friends say when this
Sure.
dialogue, or even Nick Fuente say, and it's not really like I'm deeply offended. I guess it's
Right.
more semantics almost. I would
Sure.
say I don't think Zionists represent authentic Judaism. To me, the way I see authentic Judaism would be the Judaism of the Old Testament prophets.
Sure. Yeah.
That's how I see authentic Judaism. And so when I see, because you think about like the Old Testament, the prophets and the small minority of people surrounding loyal to their ideas and to
Agree.
God
I
himself.
agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. But you
Yeah.
have to think, does that type of Judaism exist anymore? Because you know
In
what I
some
mean? Like
pockets.
I'd say 85% of the Jews today are of the Ashkenazi Khazarian roots, and we can talk about that if you disagree. But um, they
They
are,
white people. That they don't fool me. They white people
yeah.
with big
I
noses.
mean, I feel the same way. Like they are, they are the Khazarians, in my opinion, and they took on the Talmud, not the Torah. So the
Mhm.
Talmud is their main text, and it's been their main text for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I guess my concern and question would be like, is there such thing as true Judaism anymore, or have Zionist Jews completely hijacked the religion? Because
Mm.
even the Torah Jews, the famous Torah Jews, even they study the Talmud. And the
Mhm.
Talmud, I mean, it's a terrible, hateful book, you know. So
Mhm.
what do you think?
I for me the jury is still out.
Sure.
I would say the Talmud definitely has some really ugly stuff in it, like really ugly stuff in it.
Yeah.
But let me give you a small comparison, and some Muslims are going to yell at me in the group chat and like
Okay.
might even punch me in the face or unsubscribe from me or tell me what a terrible person.
Oh,
In
okay.
in Islam, we have collections of hadiths, and a hadith, I don't know if you're familiar with that, is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Sure.
And some of the hadiths are not accurate. There's a whole Islamic uh, science for figuring out which hadiths are authentic. And it was developed hundreds of years ago, and which ones are maybe authentic, and which ones are kind of wish washy, and which ones are completely ridiculous.
Right.
And sometimes, like a lot of times, the body of Muslim believers, people that even if they're not seriously scholastically inclined, they will hear a supposed hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and will just all go, huh? Like, particularly Pakistan has a problem with fake hadiths, from what I've
Okay.
read and heard from other Muslims living in Pakistan. The Talmud, from what I've heard from Jews, is kind of like, how do I say this? It's like a 5,000 year. How old is it? Like it's a many thousand-year-old
Yeah.
Tumblr article,
Yeah, it is.
and so some Jews have different interpretations, and some take certain parts of this Tumblr article, basically this Jewish Tumblr article, more
Mhm.
seriously than others. So it
Sure.
seems to me that the old school Torah Jews who reject Zionism,
Mhm.
they at the very least take those certain passages of the Talmud with a grain of salt.
Agree. I agree with that.
That
And
seems to be the
I want to just say I don't like I don't judge the Torah Jews. I actually, when I first started getting into the subject, I actually compared them to the prophets because there's so little of them, and they are basically calling out their own community. So I would respect them in that way. I can't imagine a Bible scripture that says it's okay to rape a 3-year-old girl. You know, like in the New Testament, we have scriptures that are questionable, but they're things like, submit to slavery, for example. And that's something we talk about a lot in the Christian world, that Paul told slaves to submit, basically. And so we talk about how is that's injustice, but there's nothing in the New Testament that would ever tell anybody to rape a child.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there are so many Jewish rapists of children, and that they can go to Israel to find safety from the law after they break it. And then the fact that the Talmud says this, I can't help but draw a line between those things. You know what I'm saying?
Where there's smoke, there's usually some degree of fire. For sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know the Quran enough to judge, but I don't know if I have never heard in my life of a holy book that allows for pedophilia. Like,
No.
so
No.
I mean, maybe I'm being a hard ass on this, but I mean, these are kids.
I actually asked a Jewish person many, many moons ago. This is about 15 years ago. I asked them this question about that part in the Talmud where it says, can you rape a 3-year-old? And what this person said to me is that that's actually not what it says.
Huh.
What it actually says is if a girl under the age of 3 gets raped, then it doesn't count, as in she's still considered a virgin, still untraumatized, unblemished.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the logic of that is saying, hey, Jory, can you remember anything before the ages of 8?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how are you going to remember? I think that's the logic of it. Maybe that's what they meant originally, but over time it has come to mean something else for a large segment of certain Zionists.
It has. It's a problem. It's a big problem.
You see what's going on in Gaza right now. Clearly, they take that interpretation of that specific Talmudic passage, and it makes you wonder, okay, so, here in Islam, we're always calling out ISIS.
Right.
ISIS doesn't represent mainstream Muslims at all. Not even close. Doesn't even represent conservative, traditional, hardcore Salafi Muslims. Like a lot of people just across the board, left, right, and center in Islam, soundly reject ISIS. I don't see a whole lot of rabbis coming out and condemning or explaining those passages in the Talmud.
They're not. Nope. And that's the frustrating thing is, like, if the whole Twitter is posting these terrible things that are in the Talmud, and not one of them are coming out and explaining them to us,
right,
there's a problem there because they're not calling it out. And that's the biggest problem with I think the Jewish tribe in general, is that they don't seem to call their leaders out. They don't seem to call their books out. They don't seem, you know what I mean? Like, they might call out Zionism, but are they calling out the fact that Zionist Jews own everything, basically, and that they own BlackRock, basically, which basically owns our government? And I rarely see, like, the Torah Jews, for example. I never see them calling out the fact that we're completely occupied by Jewish Zionists, and that there is this Zionist Jewish supremacy going on. Mm-hmm. And I just always see them blaming white supremacy. And I'm not saying white supremacy isn't a problem. It is, obviously. Mm-hmm. But in our country, it's Jewish people, it's Jewish white people, basically, that are in charge of everything. And that's not being called out. So I feel like, people like me who are not extremely qualified to talk about the Talmud, we're kind of being forced to talk about it because the people that should be talking about it are not talking about it.
I think that's a very fair point. I mean, I sometimes get people who are more anti-Zionist and really just straight up anti-Jew than me, who are
Right.
far more on that spectrum, who are just basically pro-Hitler, come to me and
Right.
say, those people are the authentic Jews. Those are the authentic Jews. And I always try and give a little bit of constructive pushback on that. Because
Sure.
we don't want to have a repeat of the Holocaust.
No.
No, we don't. That's not a road that we want to go down. But
Not at all.
these issues do need to get addressed. They do need to get talked about. And it's just, I'd love for Rabbi Shmuley or Ben Shapiro to sit down and explain what these actually mean.
I would love that too.
It does seem to me, because Jews are Ashkenazi Jews, at least, are basically white people with big noses like me. It does seem to me that white supremacy and Jewish supremacy are linked in a special kind of way. I come from it a little bit different angle because I grew up with a Jewish Zionist stepfather.
Interesting.
So my parents got divorced when I was about 10, 11. My mother basically left my father for a quack doctor that she had been working with in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay.
So I moved from Waco, an hour south of Dallas, as a kid to Dallas itself, because my mom had already been getting involved in some sort of weird alternative medicine scheme with this quack doctor originally from Detroit, Michigan. And gosh, they really, I don't talk to my mother, by the way, but really both her and this guy should be in jail because,
oh my gosh,
basically my mom moved us in with this dude, and then she blamed me as a 10-year-old kid for the divorce. And she said that I was responsible. I personally, as a 10-year-old kid, was responsible for it because I was a bad boy. So she needed to marry this. I called him the Jew Nazi because he was like a Nazi. He was like a Jew, but he was a Nazi.
Yeah, I know those exist.
They exist. He was an atheist Zionist quack doctor who was also a eugenicist.
Interesting and scary.
It's scary, yeah. And he and my mother would basically say, "Oh, we can help you cure cancer and AIDS with homeopathy."
Oh my
and they
gosh.
were just it was pretty weird. They really both should be in jail for defrauding people.
It sounds like it.
But I remember having conversations with him where he's just this. First of all, he was born premature, so he was not very healthy. He was kind of a fat, short, little pudgy dude.
Right.
And then the other thing was he would always come talk to me. I'd have these breakfast conversations. We'd come and say, Harry, the Nazis had the right idea, but they just didn't go about it the right way. He would say this all the time.
And he was Jewish.
He was Jewish, and he would say things like, I would say, well, what do you mean by that? And he would say, the Nazis were right about eugenics, but they should have killed all the handicapped people with Down syndrome instead of the smart Jews like me. Yes, the smart Jews like me should have been allowed to live, but the stupid Down syndrome people should have been killed immediately.
Right.
And I just
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just explain this to people all the time, in my family. There's something wrong with this dude that my mom left my dad for. And they'd be like, oh, Harry, that's anti-Semitism. Why are you so pro-Nazi? It's like, no, I'm not the Nazi. He's the Nazi.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the fact that these people are called Ashkenazi Jews is way too coincidental. There's something I don't know what's up there, but there's something weird about that. And the fact that that basically Hitler and the Jews basically joined forces, the Zionist Jews joined forces in order to get the Zionist Jews to go to Palestine. It's all
Right.
it's kind of like Nazis and Zionists are just two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah. So when I looked into that, it seems that Zionism originally started for the Christian side. It originally started as a way. This is before the Scofield Bible, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Christians who were embracing Zionism, whether they came up with the idea or whether it was Jews, like that's debatable. I've heard it both ways, but
Sure.
it started as a way to get rid of Jews out of Europe. And then we're talking about Hitler doing what he did, and then you're kind of saying Hitler was not a Zionist because he liked Jews. He was a Zionist because he hated Jews and he wanted to
Right.
get rid of them. And
Right.
then you think about what was Nazism as a philosophy. Well, it was National Socialism, borrowed from Mussolini, but it was also ideas about German racial supremacy and also pro eugenics thinking
Mm-hmm.
and neo-paganism and occultism that
Yeah.
was swimming around stuff in the 1800s, and eugenics was swimming around in European social circles as a thought, in the 1800s and early 1900s. So, in a lot of ways, Nazism and Zionism are really, they're two different swamp creatures from the same swamp. That's how
Right. Yeah,
know.
they're so it's so the way that we were told that Nazis behaved, the Zionists are behaving even worse, I think. And that I think it's because technology has gotten so advanced that like if the Zionists have much more technology than the Nazis did, so they
Mhm.
can like just bomb the crap out of people in a way that I don't think that the Nazis had the capability of doing, even if they wanted to.
For sure. For sure. I mean, that is just the unfortunate nature of modern warfare, especially when you're dealing with these people that have been systematically stuffed into an open air prison that's like smaller than the state of Rhode Island,
It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
But, with all this darkness, I do see a lot of positive changes. And when you look at generational polling amongst evangelicals, it does seem that, praise be to God, there's some kind of shift. There's
There
some sort of.
is. There
Tell
is.
me about that. I want to hear about that.
Well, the first of all, I think the younger generations are just where we have so much more knowledge and information than our parents did and grandparents did. So I think that we are slowly or more quickly than the older people becoming unbrainwashed, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But even the older people are being forced to think through these things because the younger people are telling them about, hey, we've been wrong about a lot of things, and watch this video. And I've been doing that with my mom and my stepdad. And my mom, who was completely ingrained, to treat Jews like they're special, she's coming around and starting to understand. And the way that evangelicals, and even concluding myself, can begin to understand this is that these Zionists are not the Israelites. They're not the Israelites of the Bible. They
That's right.
they they have convinced evangelicals in the world that they are the real true Israelites, and they're not. And I mean, we can just look at their skin color and know that they're not. I mean,
They
I
white.
don't, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Or we're being gaslit so much by these people, and they are just basically other Europeans, but they have convinced the world that they are Semitic because they call everyone anti-Semitic who comes against them. So that, I think, is the first step for evangelicals, understanding that these are not the real Israelites, that these are um, basically Jewish converts from the 7th or 8th century, from what we would call what was called Khazaria, basically. And they have suppressed everything about Khazaria because that's the whole game. They want us to believe that they are the original Israelites. And people need to understand that these Khazarians / Ashkenazis, they make up, I think it's 85% of the Jews today. So most Jews today are white Jews originating from Khazaria, which was the Ukraine / Russia area. And it's just, I always say Zionism has been the biggest scam of all time. So Christians, and especially evangelicals, they have an easier time digesting this and becoming unbrainwashed by understanding that these are not real Jews. These are, that's a hard thing to say because they are Jews, but they're not Semitic and they're not the real Israelites, and therefore they are not the real Jews. And we can point to the scriptures in Revelations 2:9 and 3:9 where it talks about the synagogue of Satan, people who say they are Jews but are not Jews. So that really is helping evangelicals come around because they're understanding that the scriptures, there's another way to look at the scriptures. And these are people that say they are Jews, but in reality, what's a Jew? I don't even know anymore. But I do know that they're not the original Israelites. And I think that when more evangelicals wake up to that fact, that everything kind of unravels from there.
Yeah, we're certainly starting to witness that. A lot of people I see on social media, a lot of people on X in particular, who have been die-hard, hardcore Trumpers from day one, are now saying they're not going to vote for the president.
I know. I'm amazed and surprised in a good way.
Right here. I'm one of them. I mean, I wasn't super hardcore from day one, 100%, but
right.
Back in 2020, I was willing to crawl over broken glass for Trump, and I would go back to some darkness or some intrigue, shall we say, before, after the bright spot of changing minds. Donald Trump seems to have changed his mind, but in reverse. He's going in the wrong direction. Now, I've always understood Trump to be a guy who says, I'm really tough, Kim Jong-un, we're going to meet you with such fire and fury. And then he'll come back and say, hey, let's make a deal. And then next thing you know, Trump's crossing the DMZ to shake hands and jump in the ball pit with Kim Jong-un. It's like, wow, glory to God. Hallelujah, this is amazing.
Right. It was interesting.
But I've always known that Trump does that as a style. But there's something different about this thing with Israel. Like back in 2016, he was much more critical of everything going on with Israel Palestine. And then over the years, he got in office, and then he tried to he moved the capital Jerusalem, and he's gotten deeper and deeper into BB's orbit, and now you see at the RNC no nuance whatsoever. So the old statement that I've always been able to say to people, well, Trump's just like that. He A/B tests, like Scott Adams says. He goes back and forth, but he's really trying to make a deal. It doesn't feel like that with this issue. It feels like he's kind of drunk the Kool-Aid himself. Do you think he's compromised, or is he drunk his own Kool-Aid that Rabbi Shmuley and his daughter Ivanka and Jared Kushner have been selling him? What do you think is going
on? I think that Trump has been, I kind of have a different perspective on this. I think that Trump has been kind of in bed with Israel and specifically the Jewish mafia for a very long time, far before he ever got into politics. And we kind of see that with his close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell, the woman. Her father, Mr. Maxwell, I don't know his first name, but her father was extremely high up there in the Mossad, in part of the
Yes.
Mossad. And Trump had a very close relationship with these people for a very long time. And I don't know if you saw that I posted a picture of him with
Oh,
his
yes.
little children
Hmm.
with Epstein. So I mean, he's been involved with these people, and we know Epstein was a Mossad agent as well.
Very
So
much so.
so he's been involved with these people long before politics, which makes you wonder, are they the ones that propped him up in the first place? And I've also heard, I don't know if you've probably seen me post things like this, but I've heard bankers say on CNN that basically they saved Trump back when he was bankrupt, because he was more valuable to them alive than totally broke and dead, not dead in a literal sense, but you know what I mean, not Trump anymore. So
Hmm.
I feel and think that what's going on is that Trump has always been owned by the Zionist banksters.
Hmm.
Um, Not always, but for decades, for a long time. And I also think that he could be involved with Epstein in a gross way. Could be, maybe not.
Could be.
Could be. I'm not saying he is, because there's a lot of pictures going around with him with little girls that are not real pictures. They're AI. And
Right.
so I try really hard not to post anything that is not true. So but there has been some accusations that he was with a 13-year-old girl back in the day, and that got suppressed because he paid her off. I don't know if that's 100% true or not. It's just an allegation. So there could be some bribery and some blackmail there that we're not sure about. And then I don't know if I've also posted this before, that Trump goes way back with the Clintons, and he's been friends with the Clintons,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
for a very long time,
Very long
from New
time.
York City and all, him being a realtor. He's always been in the in club. And so I think that this whole making him seem like he's an outsider, I think it's a psyop, because I look at who he's been involved with his entire life. And what did he do before he was president? He was a realtor, and then he got into Hollywood and
Hmm.
reality TV. And so, I mean, I think he's the greatest actor of all time, and I think he is the greatest asset that Israel could have ever asked for, because he's manipulating people who otherwise would be revolutionaries, I think. Um, because even like what happened with January 6th, like I feel that these people they're defending Trump, but they need to learn to defend America and let
Yes.
go of Trump, because Trump is not America first. Trump is Israel first. And we could
Yes.
speculate whether or not that's been all along, or if he sold out. It really doesn't matter though, because I mean, did you see now he's looking to make the BlackRock owner Larry Fink one of his like treasury secretary or something like that.
After he made JD Vance his VP pick. Gosh, man, eye
Yeah, like
roll.
there's just no way to claim that this man is America first. I wish he was. I wish that we did have a
Same.
populist candidate that was going to take on the Zionists and that was truly America first. And I hope and pray someone like that rises up. But right now, we don't really have anyone like that. Um, Except I guess Jill Stein. But she's on the far left, and a lot of people won't vote for her because of that. So
She's also Jewish, by the way.
she's also Jewish, and it's not that that's the only reason that's a
Not a bad thing at all,
problem.
but
Yeah, I
it's just
know. The
ironic.
only And I want to say, like, the only reason that's a problem is because Jewish people are already completely overrepresented in our government. I mean, they're like 2% of the global population, and they're like half of America's oligarchs who we know in America, the richer you are, the more you control our politics, because that's how our system works. So I'm not I have no issue with Jewish people being in our government, but I think it needs to be more fair, where they are represented about at 2%. Maybe, and I wouldn't even care if it was a little more than that. But it's right now, it's way ridiculous. It's like I read somewhere they're overrepresented by like 1,700%, and I don't know if that's true or not. But it is extreme, and that's my only issue. Like if we were not completely overrepresented already, I wouldn't care less if Jill Stein was Jewish. I wouldn't care less if anyone was Jewish. It's just that Jewish people are running our government. And I mean, I always say this to people. I said, what would Americans think if the Chinese were running our government, or the Russians were running our government? And that's exactly the same thing.
What
The
would
Israelis,
they say?
yeah, what would they, or what the Muslims? Oh my gosh, can you imagine if the Muslims were running our government? Americans would flip out. So why is this any different? This is a foreign occupation.
Yes,
And
that part I agree with you 110%.
you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get why this is any different. And so no offense to Jill Stein, I wish her well. But I also don't believe in the system. And I'm like, if Jill Stein, okay, let's say Jill Stein was calling out the Federal Reserve. Let's say Jill Stein was calling out Jewish supremacy in all of our systems. If she, and let's say she was even calling out, the Talmud a little bit or something. I don't know. If she was calling these bigger issues out, I would trust her a lot more. But she's not. She's only calling out Zionism. And to me, that's just not enough, whether she's Jewish or not. I need someone that's gonna say, we're gonna take on the Zionist Jewish supremacy in our government and in our media and in our corporations, and we're gonna take all that on, and we're gonna call out Jewish supremacy, not just in America, and not just in Palestine, but in the entire West, and some people say much of the world. So
yeah, I one of the conspiracy theories that because I say conspiracy theory and in kind of a jovial way, because sometimes these things obviously turn out to be true. One of the conspiracy theories that I've been entertaining lately and considering, I'll put it out there, I do wonder if Trump actually converted to Judaism in the last few years or so himself.
I read that. I read that he did in 2017.
Because
2019, I don't know, 2017 or 2019, I can't remember.
Because it's you look at how the Jews entered Europe, they entered by conversion. Well, how do people convert? Well, let me tell you something. As somebody who's a convert to Islam, the way I converted to Islam is I wasn't Muslim, and I started hanging around a lot of Muslims. And it's gradually, slowly but surely, I started to agree and vibe with their worldview a lot more. And then I became Muslim. Yeah. So
I get it. I get it, because
Trump's got his daughter, with the Muslims too. Jared. Wasn't our conversation today, but anyways, Jared. It's he's talking to Jared, and he's talking to Ivanka, and his grandchildren are Jewish. It's kind of like, I could see a scenario where Jared and Ivanka are like, okay, kids, go up and ask Grandpa, when are you going to become a Jew just like us? We wish you would be. Because if I was Jewish and Trump was my grandpa or my father and I loved him dearly, I'd be trying to get him on Team Jew. I would. Did I lose you again? Frickin' Mossad. Not Mossad. Jory? The sun will come out tomorrow. Pass your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be some just thinking about tomorrow. We will go on the sorrow till there's no tomorrow. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, you're always a day away. Folks, I apologize. We're having a little technical difficulty here. Waiting for Miss Jory Micah to come back on. I would like to note, though, that ever since I joined the Mad Bamboos podcast, ever since that time, I have just had a devil of a time with internet connectivity. Jory, you there? Did we get you back?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if something went wrong, it said.
Well, in terms of conspiracy theories, I like to say they are, in fact, theories which should be considered. They may or may not be true. Ever since I joined the Mad Mamelukes podcast a month ago, they have had nothing but grief with internet connection, especially when I'm on.
Yeah.
Even if I'm in studio with them in their neck of the woods back in the States, they've still had problems. And before that, I had my own little Moose Plus Lamb YouTube channel that was shadow banned because I started talking about how Hamas is not really operating as a terrorist organization anymore. They're really more like freedom fighters at this point. That doesn't mean I endorse all of Hamas's tactics.
I get it.
I get what they're. I mean, Hamas, they have a valid reason to fight for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Second Amendment, so
yeah,
I believe in armed resistance when it's necessary.
Right.
But YouTube basically shadow banned me. The Mad Mamelukes got shadow banned many moons ago because they had a critic of the Saudi government on, and it's been downhill ever since. I had an interesting experience. I'll tell you real quick. I had this interesting experience where I was doing TikTok for a while, and then my debit card information got joinked, and there was a fake purchase made back in the United States while I'm here in Indonesia. Well, that caused me to call my bank and ask what the suspicious charge at a Dick's Sporting Goods for $69.95 was, and they shut down my bank account. Well, I spent a month explaining to my bank that I actually am me and not somebody else. And I had other friends on TikTok who were also pro-Palestine, anti-Zionist, and they had similar experiences.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with some pretty sneaky forces here. That doesn't mean it's all. That doesn't mean everything's Mossad. I don't want to get
right.
But
but they a lot of them, are. I mean, we have a right to be a little bit paranoid because they are behind so many things that we didn't know they were behind, and so I think everybody has the right to be just a little bit paranoid about it right now. Like, yeah, you're right. Not everything is Mossad, but a lot of these things are. And I mean, they're probably the most dangerous terrorist organization in the entire world, in my opinion. And I believe they were behind killing JFK. I believe that they were behind 9/11.
Sure.
I believe that I think they possibly are behind Trump's so-called attempted assassination. That feels like another false flag. So, and they are also behind murdering a lot of people that were trying to bring a lot of this stuff to light. And they do weird things. They have so much technology that they can find out where we live. They can find out our bank accounts. I mean, look what they did to Lucas Gage. They had him swatted 4 different times. And I don't agree with Lucas Gage on how he said. He just basically says no. He has no nuance. He just says the Jews.
Jews.
So,
Damn, yeah. Lucas, chill, bro. I love you.
Yeah, like I mean, I like him because I think he's a real guy. but I think he lacks nuance in this area, and his reasoning for saying the Jews is because he feels, which we talked about is a valid point. He feels that they don't call each other out. They don't call each other's. They barely call each other out, basically. I'm
Right.
sorry, my dog just barked.
No, that's quite all right.
um,
I think he kind of did himself in when he put an Israeli flag on his child's
oh
playground
my
with
gosh!
the
And then
machine.
he lit the Talmud on fire.
It's like, of course Elon was gonna ban you, bro. Come on, you knew that
Yeah,
was gonna happen.
he's.
It was
I mean,
funny.
but in the way,
We
I
knew that
mean,
was
in a
gonna
way,
happen.
it does draw attention to the issue. So I try to be. I'm not mad at people that are like, "Oh, it's the Jews," because you could see how someone could come to that conclusion, because so many Jews are involved in this. But I want to say before we get off that I have some great Jewish friends, on online, who are all about calling out the Zionists and the
Very much so.
establishment. So I respect them. There are not many of them, but I really respect the ones that are willing to go up against their entire community, basically.
Oh, absolutely. May God reward them. May Allah Almighty reward them for their bravery, because it's not
Sure.
easy. I mean,
It's not.
somebody like Norman Finkelstein or Katie Halper are very brave and wonderful people, for
Yes,
sure.
I respect that. And even Norman, like how he said, the entire Israel is a satanic state. That's the kind of language that I want to hear from Jewish people, because I want to hear them calling out these things as evil, because they are evil. And, he even said that, I don't know what it was, but like literally, like most Israelis support what's going on in Palestine, and I think like half of them think that they're not using enough force against the Palestinians. So
Right.
it is a satanic state. Something has gone very wrong there.
Yeah, if you look at the polling that was done in Nazi Germany before Hitler took over, it was only about a third of Germans, a little less than a third, maybe a little more, of German people that support Hitler. Everybody was either did not like Hitler or they were indifferent.
Right.
So it doesn't take that many people. So when you've got polling data that shows 50 to 60% of Israelis think Bibi Netanyahu's kind of wussing out on them,
Right.
wow.
Isn't
I
that
can't imagine living
extraordinary?
in, I can't imagine being an Arab, I can't imagine being an Arab Christian or an Arab Muslim who's an Israeli citizen living in that kind of state.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine either. Or a Christian. I mean, you see how they spit on Christians as a custom over there, and
Yes,
they're like totally cool with like nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, yeah, we spit on Christians as a custom. Big deal, basically.
it's like a handshake. Come on, what do you give me like look for? It's just like shaking hands. Come on. It's
It's ridiculous.
oh man. Well, Jory, it has been just awesome to have you. Is there anything else you want to say to people? I think you've said quite a lot here that is really good information. I think we need to have more nuanced, hard conversations because sometimes people, we got these little troll monsters like Nick Fuentes, and nothing against Nick Fuentes
Yeah,
making Cookie Monster jokes on over here, and then we got
yeah,
people like Lucas Gage, using their child's play set as a effigy of the Israeli flag, waving a machete,
right,
and when we got a lot of people also going, "Oh, what are you talking about? Oh, you're paranoid." We need
right.
nuance. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on and giving us a nuance. I don't agree with everything you said, but I really appreciate your level of thoughtfulness and nuance, and it is very much necessary to the dialogue. Thank you so
Well,
much.
yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
Likewise, and you are welcome back on the Mad Mamalukes anytime. We'd love to have you again.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Y'all take care now. Thank you, Jory. Assalamu alaikum, YouTube. Y'all have a good night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.